last year, the guy that had a machete that was on the Appalachian Trail and had mental illnesses. And it's wild. You know, these days I carry bear spray, even though it's not just for bears anymore.
The rope is free! What? The rope is free! Ah, shit!
Liam's fallen into a crevasse, and I immediately thought he was dead, or at least seriously hurt.
And my guts had been ripped out of my body and were being contained by my flight suit.
I know a mountain lion is on top of me. Welcome to episode 5 of the WILDERTAINMENT podcast. I'm your host, Vince, former helicopter rescue swimmer in the Coast Guard and a NOLS graduate, which we'll talk about in this episode. All right, we're gonna tone things back a little bit today. We've had some pretty atrocious stories in the past here. We've had survival stories up the wazoo. We've had a helicopter crash in the mountains of Utah. Incredible story told by Gina Panuzzi, whose guts were literally torn apart. That was episode 2. Episode 3, mountaineers falling in a crevice about 60 feet in the mountains of New Zealand. Don't need to hear that anymore. Just brutal survival. And then on top of that, we have a mountain lion attack story by just a poor guy that's just trying to have a nice leisurely camping Tinder date out in the mountains on episode 4. And then this mountain lion comes and harasses him. So we don't need that today. Today, we're just going to talk about leisurely hiking. And by leisurely, I mean brutally and atrociously long. These are the marathon of hikes, the PCT and the AT, the Pacific Crest Trail and the AT over on the East Coast. So 2 incredible guys that have hiked these long hikes where the replenishment is brutal. You need to plan this out as far as your water goes, but you know, it's a sport in itself. So let's tune in for some hiking today. If you're a fan of this podcast, then please show your support by going on the Apple Podcast and leaving a 5-star review, whether you hate it or love it. Just give it 5 stars and then give a little comment about how amazing this show is so far. And that's really going to help me out. And then follow it on WILDERTAINMENT on Instagram and on YouTube, subscribe and do all that stuff and blah, 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 subscribe, blah, blah, blah. All right. So WILDERTAINMENT podcast, Archie Sanchez, and we're going to just call him Chewy on today. PCT, AT, and National Outdoor Leadership School, NOLS. Here we go. Welcome to the podcast, boys. Archie Sanchez and Matthew Kelly. That was quite the setup process. I'm glad to have you guys on, though. Thanks for coming.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Here's my first topic at hand. So you guys are 2 experienced hikers, right? You've both gone on the PCT. Archie, how far did you get, Archie, on the PCT?
I got 1,016 miles. So California.
Is that the actual half?
Ish. I really don't know, but I did California.
Okay, gotcha. And then Chewy, you completed it, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So for everyone listening in, the PCT is the Pacific Crest Trail. Is that accurate? Tell us from where it starts and where it ends and what it stands for.
Well, it does stand for the Pacific Crest Trail. It follows the crest side of a mountain, which is kind of, I think, how it got its name. But a lot of people think that, looking at it, PCT, it stands for the Pacific Coast, but there's a totally different trail system that, you can walk the beaches.
Oh, interesting. So what did you hike?
Me and Archie both did the PCT.
Okay, sweet. All right. So my first question, I'm coming in like red hot over here. Guns a-blazing. What do you guys enjoy about hiking? Because to me, it's the worst experience of my freaking life. Seriously, like
what are you asking, man?
I'm asking that question. What do you guys most enjoy about? I guess it's the sport of hiking.
It's a pretty hard question, actually. Yeah, there's a lot to it. I like hiking. I'm a big avid outdoors camper. I don't know. Through hiking is something completely different than just going on a day hike or being a weekend hiker, packing for 3 days, going in and out. It's a total different experience.
Like in what sense? Like in like the sense that like a sprinter is completely different from like a marathon runner?
In the sense of you can actually on a weekend, you can pick a specific location and see a bunch of epic things in a short period of time. like Yosemite, you can go and camp for a weekend in Yosemite and go do a bunch of day hikes and you see a bunch of cool stuff. But going through and day to day seeing a bunch of little things and then the big things, I don't know. I don't know what to do with my hands right now.
It's like these
Archie
little
thinks
things.
Archie thinks this is like the Joe Rogan podcast or the Conan O'Brien show, and that there's thousands and billions of people listening, even though there's probably like three people like on their couch skipping through things, you know? So can we please loosen up and tell us why the fuck hiking is cool?
I think it's more backpacking. Like, it's not the hiking.
Yeah.
Although hiking is neat, but like, it's the backpacking. If only the only reason I like hiking is for that feeling, that adrenaline or that heart pump that you feel kind of in your head at the end of a long hike. You get it from all sorts of different things. Hikers, climbers get it from climbing, bikers get it from downhill assaults. But like for hiking, if you're going up a 6,000 foot mountain or an elevation high up, it's kind of, you feel the heart, you hear it, you can feel it in your hands and in your feet. But like what Archie was saying, if you're backpacking and you're hiking, you're experiencing these little things that make up the big picture. Like he was right, like Yosemite and even California for that matter, like I'm sure that only a third or even a quarter of the population have even seen as much of their home state as like there is out there. So it's definitely like a way to get out in your backyard and take it slowly. Like Stephen Wright said, that anywhere is walking distance if you have the time. That's what I like about it.
Interesting. So you just compared it to like more or less extreme sports, and you're saying what? Like you kind of get a thrill in the same way that you would in those high pressure moments of, say, rock climbing when you're about to fall, or bombing it down on a mountain bike.
Absolutely. You don't know what your next day is going to be like. You got 20 miles to go crush to get to that next point, to get to the next point, to get to the next point. And it's a rush. You think about it before you go to bed. You
think about like the mileage you're about to cover like that next day, and like that's everything, the rush.
You think about how much water is there going to be water when you get there. You think of all of that. You think about your food consumption. You think about water. You think about the miles, your physical fitness at that time. Sometimes you get injured. Sometimes you're just so sore, especially at the beginning. There's a big learning curve too, especially on your first through hike. But just all of that, all the stress levels, and
What are some examples of like a Gumby when they start off on a through hike? Like, what are some rookie mistakes?
Packing heavy.
I did. Yeah. I started the Appalachian Trail with 42 pounds on my back. Like that was my first time doing a long distance trail. And I definitely fear packed, like packing things that you fear are going to happen out there to you. And so, they had those anti-venom snake bite kits that they sell at Walmart, which are supposed to like get the venom out of the snake bite, but it's all just fairy tales. Like they'll get you to buy those products based on the chances and likelihoods of really touching snakes and getting bit. So I packed that. I packed way too many. Like I packed 2 different types of stove, thinking that I was going to lose one.
Now, like, what do you mean stove? Like, not a little tiny pocket rocket that heats up your food?
Right. Yeah. I packed 2 of those, which I mean, they don't take a whole lot of weight, but still it's like, you don't have to bring 2.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done it on like bigger hikes. Like, I went back to the Wind River Range and we were going to be there for about a week. And just in case that thing blew out, I brought 2. But I guess this is a different situation, right? Because you're going in light because you're doing such a mileage every day.
Yeah. Well, you work up to your miles too. A lot of people, if this is the first through hike or just even first attempt, you don't even know where you're going to be. Like my first day, I did 8 miles, and I was like, dude, I'm crushing it. I'm doing good. I didn't even get to the halfway mark, man. And I woke up the next day and I was sore, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. You just chip away at it. But within a week, we were doing 15 miles a day constantly, and then you hit your 0 day and you rest, and then you go on again.
Once you get accustomed to it, right? Because I'm assuming at first, like your feet are really that gruesome, painstaking part of your body. But after that, once you get past that, sore feet mode, what is the part of your body that gets most worked on these through hikes?
After the feet?
Yeah. I mean, is it still the feet even once the first week goes by?
Well, everyone's anatomy is different, man. I mean, I don't think I felt my first real injury until I already forgot the name of the town. But it was probably like 2 weeks in, and I did 2 consecutive 20-mile days. My ankle just turned into a big softball, and I woke up that way, and it hurt, and I was just like, oh damn, what am I gonna do? So I just wrapped it up, and just keep going.
What about like not injury wise per se, but like soreness wise?
Everything's sore, man. I don't know. Chewy?
For me, it's shoulders. My shoulders get really worn out just from standing tall or just crouched over. But there was twice on the AT when I first started the Appalachian Trail in Maine. I had an IT band issue, which is muscle connected outside of the leg. Had the same issue rise up again on the PCT 2 years later when I did that challenge. And I was right outside of Idlewild, California, when it just inflamed. Met a guy that was a yoga instructor, and he said, yeah, you need to really be doing these exercises to stretch out your hips. And because these muscles are all connected, and he really broke it down in a way that made sense, that each muscle relies on each other. And if you're strengthening all these other muscles around it, then it helps to, put certain things back in place. So it's, but yeah, I had an IT band issue. I had to actually make a splint, or not a splint, but a wrap on my leg based on tape, because I didn't have a brace or anything. And at the time I was 27. Luckily, after that, the pain stopped. It went away after about 3 or 4 days of really stretching it out and using turmeric and all these different supplements. But yeah, outside of legs and feet, like shoulders for me, it's tough.
This is kind of an interesting podcast because so far we've had people with these kind of epic, more or less survival stories, right? But this is in a sense a different kind of epic where people don't really understand the distance and this oftentimes the solitude that goes into one of these through hikes throughout the country. And Chewy, you've done the the AT. So could you explain where that starts and where that ends again?
Yes, it goes from Georgia on the Appalachian Mountain Range up to Maine. So it's about 2,200 miles, right. give or take a few miles here and there.
So 2,200 miles. And then how far is the PCT?
PCT is 27, I think.
2650.
2650, yeah.
Okay. Now, Chewy, having completed both of them, have you kind of noticed a change in people in the person that's near the end versus because I'm assuming a lot of people don't complete this challenge they set themselves, right? Do you see a shift in that personality type?
Sometimes. Yeah. There was a few people that were going northbound that were just as grumpy as when they started. It just depends on the weather. If you go on the AT northbound, sometimes you follow these weather patterns, based on certain seasons. If you start in March, you have the spring weather that follows you up. And so there were a couple of guys that were just not in good moods. I shared a shelter with him one night, and the next morning I was just like a little bit depressed from like being around these people, and I was like, geez, like I'm not having the same experience as you are. I don't know, like there might be changes. Like it just depends on if that's what you're going out there for. Sometimes I see people that sometimes do it for the party, and they don't necessarily change. My friend Tommy that I hiked the trail with, he had to change, but he became a father shortly after the trail. That was something he wanted to do.
Would you say that a lot of the people that do these kinds of hikes might be like running away from something at times? Because sometimes I've come to see that even like in traveling and like hostels and stuff, you see like, oh, this is a party, this is an adventure, but then you start to like look in, like have some perspective of yourself and the people around you. You're like, maybe we're all kind of like fleeing.
I saw all kinds of different walks of life, man. I saw a whole family on trail. Wow. Father, mom, 3 kids, from like ages like 8 or 9 to like 12. They were all crushing miles. It was crazy. There was 13-year-old, 15-year-old kid doing it. He was like 13 or 14 when he did the AT, and then he did the PCT solo at 16. Yeah, man, it was just all kinds of people, all different walks of life from all over the world.
But what about like Chewy, you're kind of addressing like that person seemed to not have a good time. Do you think like he was doing this as a personal like goal, but also kind of like escaping his own like civilization reality potentially?
I don't remember. I do remember that his trail name was Bodhisattva. So maybe he was feeling like he needed to take some kind of spiritual journey. But obviously he was just beat up from the trail, and that sort of living to be uncomfortable is important. Like, I think that's the reason why a lot of people go out to do these sorts of things, is to try to prove something to themselves, to others, maybe see if they have it in them, go out there and do. See a lot of families do the trail. I don't know if I've seen that many unhappy people though. Like the only reason why those people stick out is because they were, of a rare type. But then you also have, these days, unfortunately, was it last year, the guy that had an axe or machete that was on the Appalachian Trail and had mental illnesses, and it's wild. These days I carry bear spray, even though it's not just for bears anymore.
Well, what happened with the hatchet?
It's a guy named Sovereign or something like that. He was he had a little bit of illness that he was in Virginia on a part of the trail, and he was going up and down and just interrogating people. And unfortunately, some folks just had a wrong run-in with him. And during a self-defense, he ended up killing a guy. So, And normally we think of the trail as being safe, but this day and age, as far as it gets more publicity, it's, you have to take more precautions. And I hate that it's like that. I'd say that talking about the trail these days, God, like I can tell you about my experience, but that's been 4 or 5 years now for some of these things. And it's like, things change between now and then.
That's pretty crazy. So wait, what happened with this hatchet? Like he was maybe a little sporadic, and then he got in a predicament with a guy, and what happened? He self-defensed with a hatchet?
No, yeah. So the guy, the guy that had the issue with the hatchet was the perpetrator or whatever. And the 2 hikers on the trail were just trying to hike past him, and ended up getting caught in his path. So, during self-defense, you try to protect yourself, but was trying to protect himself and protect others. And fortunately, that axe wielding guy chopped him up. I don't know, much more about it than that, but I don't hear anything about that on the PCT though.
That was that was the AT.
Yeah, Yeah, that was the AT.
interesting.
That was last year on the AT.
Yeah, that's those East Coasters. You know, there's history there. You know, we all have an attitude.
Oh, the West is so much bigger. They can just hide the bodies a little bit easier.
That's
so much desert to walk through.
So you talked about like your trail names. What was your trail name, Chewy? I guess was it Chewy?
Yeah.
Okay. That's funny. Yeah, I guess I should have prefaced this podcast with saying that all three of us went through a NOLS course together. And I guess in NOLS you have a similar situation where you have your trail name or your wilderness name. What was yours, Archie?
Medicine Man.
That's right. Yeah. You were in an article under Medicine Man. So why do they call you that?
Unlike popular belief, it wasn't marijuana or mushrooms. Actually, it was 800 Motrins. I had a bunch of 800 Motrins on me in that first week. I linked up with a group of guys within a couple of days, and we started making our first push through the desert. And right off the bat, one of the guys, his name was Smokes. He was suffering some foot pain, and this other guy, Green Butters, had a knee injury, like an old knee injury that was just gnawing at him. And I was having issues with my ankle, and I think we just all started having those initial aches and pains, and like nobody brought any anti-inflammatories, but I had a nice big sack of 800 Motrins, so I was passing them out like candy, and the name stuck, Medicine Man.
Was that heavy? Like, did you make the same mistake as Chewy as far as, you know, packing in too heavy to start with?
No, I won't say that. I did shit. You always have a yard sale, explode out, you know, you pull your ruck apart, and then really evaluate everything you have and lighten your load. A little shakedown. It's called a shakedown. But I was trying to prepare as much as possible. So I went in about 30 pounds heavy. I always used to carry too much water. There was always a water fear that I had at the beginning. But once you realize what your water consumption is, what you actually function on, what you need to cook at night, then you start shaving that down too. But no, I was even thinking about not even going with the stove, going cold soaking. But I ended up not doing that. I ended up took fuel in the stove, food, and water. But yeah, it wasn't that big of an issue for me.
Well, because like I recall in NOLS, you were, you know, I think you were the smallest guy.
I was mad at NOLS, man. I was mad at NOLS. They overpacked us at NOLS, man.
Yeah, you're definitely like a donkey, like a pack mule. But nevertheless, like you could still make some decision. I feel like I recall your pack being like the biggest. But maybe that's because you are also the smallest, so like the dimensions looked off.
Lurch had a pretty big pack too, though.
Oh yeah, a huge pack.
But again, he's a pretty big man too. 6'3", 6'5" or something.
6'4", something like that.
Yeah, we had one of these guys. So NOLS is National Outdoor Leadership School, and you go there and you have your own spiritual journey in itself, I suppose, because you're in a group dynamic environment and you can't run away from it, and you're not allowed to do drugs, and you're not allowed to drink alcohol, and you're barely allowed to drink coffee, and you can't really call anybody because you can't have your phone. And this lasts about 3.5 months, and god damn, that was something else. But anyway, yeah, Lurch, this one Marine, he would start the day off probably like 20 minutes before everyone else with the heaviest pack, and he would just be standing there like a Marine, just awaiting to start on the trail and being like, you slow motherfuckers, any day now would be great. And
yeah, he even rocked his combat boots, man. His deployment boots. He still had those on.
that'd be so uncomfortable. But yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit, like, since we'll get into NOLS a little bit as far as like group dynamics go, but what about like the dynamics of through hiking? Archie, you talked on your article about some folks. You told the story of a guy that was upset because he lost his group, I suppose.
Oh, yeah. That was a female, actually.
Oh yeah. Tell that
Yeah.
story. Tell that story of like, the solo dynamic versus like group.
Yeah. Well, some people go in with that, they're going to start it. They're going to do it solo, and others hope to find a group of people, and some actually plan out their hike with a group of people. A lot of people coming from other states and out of the country usually would meet up at Scout and Frodo's down in San Diego, and then they would shuttle them to Campo, where it starts down at the southern terminus if you're going northbound. So by the time they get to the terminus, these are people that have probably stayed a weekend together. And we have on our permits, we have start dates. So usually people know each other by the time they're leaving Campo, headed towards Lake Marina. And some people like myself, I went in there, I got dropped off by my sister. She just drove me down to San Diego, dropped me off, wished me good luck, kicked me in the ass on the way out, And, but you end up just figuring it out. Within the first hour, I had met my boy Moose. Moose, what's up? He's watching this. I know he's watching this. But I met, he's a coasty puddle pirate like you, buddy. But
nice.
Yeah, so being in the military and all, we just chopped it up, and it started raining on us, and I was under an oak tree out of nowhere. This 6'3" dude, huge guy, comes out of nowhere, and we just kind of stared at each other, and he's just like, "Dude, are you doing this?" And I was like, "Dude, I'm doing this. Are you doing this?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm doing it." I'm like, "Let's do it." And we just like kept walking. It was corny, bro, but we were just talking, and then we found out we were veterans, and we just crushed it that first day, and crushed it 8 miles.
Well, basically what I was wondering is like, some folks prefer to be solo. Some people prefer to be in a group.
Yeah. I mean, we started off solo, and then next, we met more people, and then we ended up being a group. And then at Lake Marina, there was already these weird group dynamics, people that were just like already grouped up and didn't want anybody else like to even talk to them, no less like say hi or anything. And we were kind of like just being rowdy and loud and staying up late. So automatically they were calling us the fraternity, and called the Goon Squad. So we started just calling ourselves the Goon Squad after that for a minute. And then, everyone switches up, it changes. People fall behind, people start walking faster, go ahead. But talking about that story, I believe we were in Tehachapi, and somebody we met out in the desert in the first couple sections, she came in, she just looked worried, like someone just like murdered her dog in front of her or something, and we're just like, "Hey man, you all right? Everything okay?" And she was just like freaking out. You could tell she was getting ready to cry, and we're like, "What's wrong?" And she's just like, "My group left me," and we're just like, "Oh, that sucks." Yeah, we know how that goes. And I just happened to ask her, I'm like, did you start off in a group? She goes, "No, I'm from Australia or from England, and I came solo." And I'm just like, "Well, you're gonna do it solo. Like, just go on solo for a little while." And she just thought about it. I'm like, you're gonna see them again. Someone's gonna slow down, someone's gonna get injured. You might speed up. You never know. There might be people you'll never see again. And that happens, you'll walk with somebody for 2 weeks straight, get to know them on a personal level, camp with them, eat with them, and you just won't see them again.
And how does she react?
Nothing. I think it just opened up she realized she was just panicking and just like wasn't really thinking straight. You get tired. You get really tired. Sometimes you need a zero. You need to get into a town and just kind of recharge your batteries. And I think that's probably where she was mentally. And there's just as much drama on trail as there is in regular life and society, that who knows what she was going through on trail or what. But I mean, that was her personal business. But we were just reassuring her that it was going to be okay. She can hike with us. Everything would be cool. Well, she ended up making a decision to stay 2 days instead of one. She recharged, and then we decided to do a third day. And she was like, I'm out of here, I'm gone. So she took off, she went solo. And then she met up with her group again. So
Oh, there you go. Do you guys prefer to go at it solo or in a group? Or mix it up?
Chewy.
I did the AT with a buddy. We hiked together, but we didn't hike together. We would camp in the same places, and if we met up for lunch here and there, we would do that. Some hours we'd be at the same pace, and some hours we wouldn't be. So like I enjoy that side of it. Kind of being a wallflower where you have your groups, but you're not really in one. That sort of thing to me is why I go out there, to be a loner, to experience that sort of cowboy lifestyle, to talk to people, to and if I get stuck with one group, then it means that there's less to see in a way. But I did float between bubbles. There were a lot of different parties that they called themselves, like the Wild Bunch. There was Chaos Brothers, Ruckus and Rampage. There was a few different Jungle Crews. Well, that was another one. Yeah, so like all these groups are really cool. I enjoy going. I think I would have gone southbound on the PCT as well. There's something just isolating about that for me. And also, as you pass northbounders, you kind of hear their stories and what you get to look forward to. And if you go northbound, then you're kind of all experiencing the trail together. There's not really anybody to let you know, like, oh yeah, when you're in this town, go check out this place or whatnot. So like southbound gives you the chance to like hear those stories and see those people and like notice their changes and like how the trail has affected them. Yeah.
Let's get back to like the AT a little bit there, Chewy. So 2,200 miles and you did that, you did that northbound?
Southbound. So did that with a buddy. Ended up hiking with the group. We had Taxi, Squared Away, Pumbaa, Potato Shake, Hummus Shake, Stinky Jesus, Ice Pack.
These are all names, by the way, people.
Oh yeah, these are all trail names for your hikers. And so at one point we disbanded close to Tennessee, and we all finished the trail in Georgia sometime around November. Most of us did. And for the PCT, I wasn't really planning on it, but my buddy Taxi from the AT kind of convinced me to go out there on the trail with him. He left the PCT somewhere around Mammoth because he felt like he was more like on a cattle prod, where he didn't like the way that the trails were built. He felt like he was more like a rat in a maze. So he ended up getting off the trail because he found the PCT too boring. Like he was another one of those characters that like he was grumpy, but like there was also just like this character.
Well, is there that boredom though? Because you are just hiking a maximum amount of mileage per day. And yeah, like if you're doing the PCT northbound, then you're in those flat deserty areas, right? Like how do you keep yourself entertained and how do you find enjoyment in it?
It does get boring. No doubt, but like that's all just a part of it. I think it takes a long time along the way for me to get bored. I don't know. What about you, Archie? Did you get bored easy or?
No, I didn't. I enjoyed like almost every minute of it. A lot of people tripped out on me because almost, I would say 98% of everybody hiking had earbuds and like was listening to music or podcasts or something. I never once did that. I didn't even carry earphones with me. I'm using pink ones today. Like, I don't use earphones, man. But no, I enjoyed it. Some days I'd just be talking to myself like a total weirdo, and I was okay with it because there was no one there to judge me. And then I'd turn a corner and there was somebody judging me. I'd be like, oh man, was I talking a little loud? And then sometimes there's so many people on trail that you'll get a couple hours of solitude, and then you're hiking with somebody, behind somebody, in front of somebody. It changes. But I didn't get bored. I wasn't bored at all.
That's true. That's a dynamic I didn't even consider, is like the podcast and just having headphones and stuff. Cause yeah, in NOLS, you don't have access to that. So at first I thought it was kind of irritating, but then after I truly did see the beauty in it. That said, if there's no one telling me not to do it, I feel like I would listen to podcasts. I would you know, and that's probably not as much of a spiritual journey as so who's the first person to do the PCT, more or less? Like, how long ago was that, at least?
Like late 60s, early 70s. I have a story out in, what place is that? Dang, I wish I remember the place. Anyways, he came out to us. It was after, and he drove out, some older gentleman with a Indiana Jones hat. And he spoke to us around a campfire, and he's all like, I did it back in 72. I was like number, I don't know what, on the PCT. And even then it wasn't complete yet. And he handed us all a $2 bill, which was pretty cool. And I think I used it on some ice cream later on down the trail when I was hungry.
Did he mention like the difference in doing it back then versus now?
Oh yeah, big difference. There was no water caches the way they are now. There was a way more stretches between water caches. Trail towns were a lot different. They weren't stocked up the way they are now. It was less people, less traffic. So it was just less abundant than it is now.
Yeah, think of how much more of a challenge that was.
External packs. Yeah.
And same goes in like the rock climbing world. Like I've seen these old videos of like old rock climbers in either their boots or their crappy tennis shoes. And they just have like a hemp rope tied around basically underneath their rib cage. And they're just totally casually making jokes, having a conversation while doing what looks like actual hard climbing. And the protection they put in is just like, you're like, it's like a rock, or it's like an actual bolt, like a bolt. They have like an old bolt, and and that's tied on to some piece of string, and they put that in a crack or something, and they tie their rope to it. But even then they only put it like a piece every 10 meters, and you're just like, oh, that's disgusting. But that's just like, in my perspective, and people like in the outdoor world often talk about this. Like, do you guys think that folks were made tougher back then? Because, you know, the athletes are still achieving more now.
Nah.
I think humans just adapt, man. Yeah. It's adaptability, your drive, you know, how much you want to do something, you're going to do it. Or like Chewy says, you know, people just give up. I was literally doing 250 miles. I had never done a through hike before. I was on the mindset of just doing a small section from Campo, California to Wrightwood. And my first permit was only 500 miles I think it stretched out to Palmdale. And by the time I got to Idlewild or Warner Springs, I put in for a second extension on my permit, and it got me all the way to the Oregon border. And then that's when I had to make up my mind, like, do I just keep going? Because once you hit Oregon, you really don't need any permits, you know, you can just keep going. So my whole thing was figuring out my last $500 that I had and see how much I can make that, like how much I can stretch that and make it work for me. I wasn't prepared for the Sierras. I didn't have my micro spikes. I didn't have a ice axe, and 2019 was like a dump, it totally dumped that year with snow. And it worked out. I got to the point where I was even doing my resupplies through hiker boxes, just hovering over a hiker box, waiting for somebody to dump a bunch of extra food that they picked up. And this, why are you laughing, Chewy? You know what I'm talking about?
Too close to home, man.
Yeah, man. You know, and I was just leapfrogging like that. My shoes blew out, you know, and then I couldn't purchase another pair of shoes. So I went through the hiker box, pulled out my insoles, got me another pair. And just figuring stuff out like that, where other people were looking at me like I was some crazy bum, you know, I kind of liked it, but it just worked out more adventurous, more like shoot by the hip kind of feel for me. And at that point, I changed from, okay, I'm going to make it to Wrightwood to, all right, I'm going to do Mount Whitney and I'm going to go over Forester Pass. And then once it was like, that was in my mind, dude, I'm talking, I had by the time I hit Bishop, I literally had $0 to my name. My buddy Mike, I hit him up on the phone. I'm like, Mike, I'm broke, man. I need money. And he cashed at me $40, got me a hotel, washed my clothes, slept good that night. Somebody bought me a slice of pizza and a beer. Woke up the next morning, realized I didn't even have my ice axe, and somebody fronted me an ice axe. Another hiker from France, and then we went off and we conquered Whitney, and then we went on and did Forester and all the other passes, and yeah. And once that happened, I was like, all right, cool, that's good. I'm good. I'm just on borrowed time, borrowed money. A couple of other hikers fronted their resupplies. Some guy Columbia was actually getting off trail and going back to Washington, and he's all like, hey man, I got food resupplies, one in Mammoth and one in Bridgeport. I'll sign them over to your name, dude. You can have them. So it was just happening like that for me, day to day, minute by minute, hour to hour. I was at that stage, like, should I stay? Should I go? What should I do? And I was just like, man, this is an opportunity I'm probably not going to get again for a good minute. So I just decided to keep going. Then after that, I hitched out to Sisters, Oregon. And then I hiked maybe 25, 30 miles. And then from there, I just thumbed it and hitched from Sisters all the way to Sandy, Oregon. And my buddy Anthony, him and his father own a roofing company. And they came and swooped me up out in Sandy, and hung out in Portland for like 4 weeks. And they freaked out because I looked all skin and bones. So they're like, oh, we're fattening you up, buddy. And then pounded hammers and did some roofing for a few weeks, stacked some chips, and then caught me a flight back to LA. And that was the end of the trip for me. Honestly, that was well worth it. I'm happy. I want to go back and finish it. Absolutely, of course. But it just gave me the bug. I want a Triple Crown as well. And, I'm not getting any younger.
That's right. The Triple Crown. Is that what you're going for now, Chewy? What's the Triple Crown?
Yeah, so the Triple Crown is the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and then the Continental Divide Trail. I think there's only a recorded number of like 200 people that have actually got their Triple Crown around the whole world. I'm sure that number is probably like closer to 400 or 500, but like that's a really cool accomplishment. 7,500 miles entirety if you combine those three trails. But it's the last remaining really, well, I wouldn't say last remaining because, I mean, this day and age, there's a lot of U.S. recreational, but like it's the baddest trail. It's straight up the Continental Divide from the Mexico border in New Mexico all the way up to through glacier through
the Rockies
up into Canada in the Canadian Rockies. Yeah.
So through British Columbia?
Yeah, I think you could probably do an international version of it if you wanted to, which would be cool.
Interesting. So it's New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, which there's some pretty atrocious mountains there, and Montana.
And then it skirts on the Idaho Montana border. Yeah. Yeah. There's sections.
I'm getting sweaty palms thinking about it.
Oh yeah, like that's. I think I've been a little.
That's some nav right there, man.
Yeah, I think that's the reason why I've been hesitant. Like, there's been a number of times, a couple of years where like I thought I'd be ready, and it's either I need to work on some kind of skill or I need to raise a little bit more money, and the CDT I was going to do it last year or this year. COVID happened, but I was planning everything out as far as my days and resupply. And my biggest resupply was going to be more than I had ever done before. It was going to be a 10 to 12 mile day or 12 day resupply. Yeah.
You never
in
did
Montana.
more than that in the AT? Like, I thought the AT had like in that last portion of Maine or something, you have like quite a couple days without nothing.
You got the 100-mile wilderness out there. But there's ways that in 2013, there were already hostels that were, able to go down these forest roads and leave, hidden packages for hikers that would pay for it ahead of time or this or that. And We didn't do that, but there are ways that people are overcoming that 100-mile wilderness, and it was really beautiful. But also, me and my buddy, I think for us, the beauty of through hiking and backpacking in general is that you push your limits. And for us, we got really comfortable with hiking these 20-mile days, and we've discovered that for us, happy hiking was light hiking. If you pack light, travel light, and know exactly your body's limitations and capabilities, you can figure you can do 100 miles in 4 days or 5 days, and that's a part of the finish line goal. So there were times that, like in the 100-mile wilderness, we probably could have been in trouble, but with us being 23, 24, stubborn youthfulness, we pushed through, and our bodies ached. But if you're carrying less food, then you're carrying less weight, and you're able to hike faster. Is kind of the formula behind it. But
what's the 100 miles like? Is that all within Maine?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we also had a section in Shenandoah National Park. 2013, they had a government shutdown in October, and so we went through a national park when it probably. I guess I'll share the story. I'm here now. We went through a national park that we weren't supposed to go through because of the government shutdown. We went through Shenandoah National Park, which was like 80 miles of it follows the Skyline Drive. And normally this section of the AT is filled with pit stops where you can, grab food, and you hardly have to bring your own. Like this section of the trail normally is, you can stop for lunch and buy a sandwich type deal. But the national park was shut down. Nobody was allowed to be in there. It was October, and it was also a bit of a rainy season. And so we were hiking through our next 100-mile wilderness, so to speak. So we were less prepared for that one. And in fact, we had to get off of the national park and onto a road so that we could hitch into town, because we went through all our supplies. So, depending on, some days you get it right, and then other days you don't. And that's part of the risk that you take, the dice that you roll.
Now, what's the wildlife like and the landscape like in these 100 miles of gap?
You'll see Pumbaa says he saw a bear. I wasn't with him when he saw it. I did see a moose. I'm sure a lot of people probably see moose up in that 100-mile wilderness. Maine, I think, they don't have anything that can kill you as far as like poisonous. Like they don't have any poisonous snakes, but the moose and the bear sure can. But then,
especially the poisonous bears.
Yeah. avoid the color bears. Take the gummy bears though. But like in places like the Sierras,
I feel like that's how you guys made it through without fucking podcasts and music. You just had a shitload of gummy bears.
Skittles, homie, Skittles. You guys know that joke about the difference between a day hiker, a weekend hiker, and a through hiker? The day hiker will see a Skittle in the middle of the trail and step on it. And then the weekend hiker will see the Skittle and step over it. And the through hiker will look at it, pick it up, and eat it.
I'm slowly starting to realize in this podcast that I'm interviewing two hobos. And it's
at heart, man, at heart.
You're going to feed us after this, right?
We got a free veteran day lunch.
Well, that was like, I was in Australia doing the whole like climber bum thing, and I was living in this little. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Camp 4 in Yosemite. So Camp 4 back in the day.
Like poop.
Yeah. Well, anyway, sorry. So Camp 4 in Yosemite was like all the climbers would hang out there and like in the 60s or 70s and whatever. And it was like a bunch of hippies and they'd smell bad and they'd just scrounge food from like the actual tourists that would pay for the attractions and whatever of Yosemite. But so I was kind of that's long gone since like Yosemite's so developed now and it's just the biggest like touristic park in the nation.
Camp 4's still there. I have a picture there.
Yeah, it's still there. It's still there, but I'm just saying like it's not the same like vibe anymore. But I don't even want to say this on the podcast, but because it's like a secret gem, but like there are those places in Australia at like camping or climbing campgrounds where it's still like that Camp 4 vibe of a bunch of homeless-ish climbers who were just hanging out, eating, like dumpster diving. And I hate to admit it, but I was dumpster diving and I could afford food, but like that was the culture and like how you did it and you live like nothing. And yeah, it didn't take long before I really was like kind of looking at myself and being like, man, I'm straight up homeless. Like my clothes was dirty and stinky. I was like scroungy looking. The hair was always a mess. And I'd go into town for resupplies and I would, honestly, personally, I was like a little ashamed, and I think that just shows like a bit of my character. Like, maybe society developed me into seeing that as wrong. It's
just ego, man. It's just our ego that we carry with us, and shedding that ego and how much of it you can and for how long. I was the same way. We all come from big towns and big cities, or at least. We're living in a modern society now, but when you go out there and you're out in the middle of the Sierra Nevadas and you have literally 8 days until you hit your next trail town, or 5 days, depending on how you hike, you're gonna develop some grit. You're gonna learn to really not care about how bad you smell. In fact, you don't even smell it no more. I think it at some point it becomes a problem to us where we're not happy with ourselves, or it's bothering us, or we feel like we're degrading ourselves a bit. For each their own. Some people just don't care. They're the stinky kid in class, like all day, every day. Not like you at NOLS, where you like to comb your hair every day.
No. I use hair glue to make sure my
gel.
hair. Yeah.
You're like, I don't have my gel.
My hair.
Well, like, what do you think? Like, how do you access your inner hobo and accept it, Chewy?
Like, I'm kind of agreeing with you, and so to speak. Like, the older I get, the more I start to care about, just being hygienic. I was actually thinking for the CDT that I was going to be in places where I'd potentially shave. Like, I've got a beard right now, sure, but that's just for No Shave November. But like, I enjoy embracing the hobo life, but I also think that there's for me, as I get older, there's just some importance with, keeping up, a cleanliness. But, like my friends Michael and Sarah, who went out to do the Sierras in 2015, he proposed on top of Mount Whitney, and after the end of Mount Whitney and the Sierras, they went into town and they had a reservation for a hotel, and they just showed up with their hiker gear, still smelly and everything. And the hotel tried to turn them away, but they were like, no, we got a reservation. This is our name. Here's our, driver, and license. And so that to me is part of the pressure that we're talking about, is like, people will stink eye us because, we don't fit into, what they say. But, and that to me is why I embrace sometimes the dirtiness of living, these ways as a way to wear it as a, badge of honor, like I'm dirty and, I earned this, so to speak.
Well, you get the stink eye because you're stinky, but and I agree with with the badge of honor when you're out in the wilderness. But for me personally, it would come to when I come into town, right, in the civilization. And so why did they get rejected? Because they look like homeless people?
Yeah,
they smell like shit.
when I finished the PCT and I got into Seattle, and me and the person I was hiking with, we had a hotel. We showered up, we cleaned up. I went back out with my beard and everything, but we went to some museum, and the security guy just kept giving us these hard looks, and I finally just had to go over to him and be like, "Look, man, we're not here to steal anything." It took me a minute to realize that I was in Seattle, like a big city, like all over again. Like I wasn't somewhere where, I could trust people the same way that they trusted me. Like I was in an area where like nobody knew my story. And so I had to remember that again. Like that to me is something that didn't dawn on me, as far as going into towns. It's like, nobody knows me here, which is both a good thing and it can be exhausting.
There's a technique on the PCT too, where you have your set of town clothes or a clean shirt and a clean pair of shorts or something, and right before you know you're going to hit a major road to hitch into a town, you make sure you clean your legs up because they're completely dirty and filthy and full of dirt and they're dark black, and so you clean up a little bit, kind of look semi-presentable. And if you're able, you as a male, you link up with a female so you guys can hitch together. And sometimes the female would be putting her thumb out to hitch, and you'd be hiding behind a tree somewhere. And when they'd stop for her, they'd be like, "Yeah, it's me and my hiking partner." And then you come out with the backpacks, and we both smell like trash, And you just throw them in the car, and you can just see the driver just like looking in the rearview mirror, like, thanks a lot, But a lot of these places, they don't understand the culture there. They're not accepting of it. They don't understand. Yet there's towns like Bishop, towns like Idlewild. They get it, right, where they get hikers through there all the time, and then you get trail angels that specifically go through and hunt these hikers walking the road. It's dangerous, to be just walking down the road. So they'll pick us up, take us into town.
That's funny, using like a girl to get picked up, because I actually tried doing that in Laos. Like I was with a beautiful blonde German girl, and I was like using her as the clickbait of hitchhiking, right? But it was weird in Laos. Like everyone that would go like drive by were super friendly, right? And they would just wave and like smile and wave and be like, "Hi," and we were like, "Oh, they're gonna pick us up," and then they would just drive by. And I don't think like hitchhiking, or at least not with the thumb, was a thing that they knew about, because again, they would just look super friendly and just be like, "Hi," and then just drive by, and we were like, "Whoa, why are you being so nice if you're not gonna pick us up?" Never got a ride. We had to take a bus. Chewy, you brought up No Shave November. Let's talk about Nude June. June 21st, apparently, according to Archie Balls here, it's officially Hike Naked Day.
That's Naked Hike Day. Hike Naked Day.
HND.
Yeah.
I missed it on the AT going southbound, but I did my own Naked Hike Day on the AT.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I passed, I wish it was a sorority, but I passed a fraternity on the way. I passed so many groups of people that were just like, "Boy, what is wrong with you?" I passed an old woman and her dog, a couple of families. I made sure that for the little ones, I wasn't, full Monty.
Too exposed.
Yeah, I made sure that for those eyes that I was at least covered. But as far as like anybody older than 18, I was just like, "Hey, how are you? How's it going?" And
this is me, and this is who I am, in all its shortness and glory.
It was September, so yeah, it was cold.
I'm sure it was, buddy. I was in a pool.
I forgot. I was all about it for like 2 weeks.
Wait, you did? Dude, it's Naked Hike Day. It's not Naked Hike half a month.
Well, no, like 2 weeks into it. Actually, when I was in Kennedy Meadows, I found out about Hike Naked Day, June 21st. And I was like, "What? Everyone just strips down and hikes naked that day. It was my first through hike. I didn't know. And people were all talking about it like it was normal. I was like, all right, cool. And come the 21st, Monday, I'm hiking through this bend coming out of a meadow, and I see 3 of the people that were hiking in front of me. It was Juice Box and AK and Captain Ron, and they're just chilling there. And some strange guy, I was like, who's this guy? It's a new hiker, They're under the shade, and he ends up being a photographer. I think his name was Ian from Outside Magazine. And he's just like, hey, what do you know about Hike Naked Day? I'm like, yeah, Monday, the 21st, man. You guys gonna do it? They're like, that's today. I was like, oh, shit. And everyone was just staring at me, and I was just like, F it, I'm down. Let's do it. Let's do this. And then he whips out this huge camera with his lens, and I'm like, oh, he's like, you want to come out of a magazine? And I was like, oh. So I was just like, dude, I'm down.
Wait, were you in the printed version of Outside Magazine too?
I don't know. It's online. I know that. But yeah, it's crazy.
Is it ever sexy? Do you ever notice somebody where like, all right, haven't seen that in a while. I'm a little aroused.
Know, man. We all have some gnarly tan lines, and everyone's still stinky and dirty. But you know what, man? You live with these people for so long, it's like you see plenty of bare butts. You see plenty of butt cheek just being on trail, living with people. That's one thing about like trail etiquette would be like making sure you tell everybody you're going to go take a poop. Hearing everyone fart at night and burp and do all the things that you don't do in civilian life.
How does it feel to hike naked? Is worn weight a thing?
Yeah, man. I mean, shape sucks. It's just like you're hiking with clothes on all day, and then all of a sudden you have these spots that are just bare now, and they're just digging into your hip and your shoulders and your side.
Yeah, you ever notice like when you go hiking for a long time, like it doesn't even take that long. Even in NOLS it happened, but like there's no hair in between your knees and between your thighs, even sometimes in between your calves. Yeah, it's like you I don't know. It's like you're waxing there, What is let's talk the struggles of these long through hikes. Let's start with Chewy. What's the biggest hurdle physically and mentally?
Physically, I think just financially, like having to save up the money to do the trail, working a job that you don't want to necessarily be working at to afford something that is down the road and you just want to be there. And then once you're on the trail, just the daily, aches and pains, but that sort of thing is just a part of it. And then I think mentally, maybe the toughest thing is probably just wanting to stay out there. Depending on if you live in California or if you're an East Coaster or anything like that. I know for me, hiking southbound, closer that I got to South Carolina and the South, I started, wanting to be done sooner. And on the PCT, I never wanted to be done. I was too far from home. I was, seeing things and experiencing new things. So for me, it was just an entire journey that didn't need to necessarily come to an end.
What about you, Medicine Man?
I think everyone has their own form of homesickness. For me, it was my son. He was 9 at the time. I have a really close relationship with him. So not being able to see him on the weekends, which was my standard norm, that would start to gnaw at me and get me to focus off the trail. I want to get back home as soon as possible. But it never really, affected me to a point where it ruined my performance in any way. But that was definitely mentally, it would be something like that. Logistics, for me, like I said, I was like Chewy talks about his funds, figuring out your water. To me, water was a big stressor logistically, your food ration, and that was pretty much about it for me. Everybody's different. Everybody hikes their own hike. Everyone has their own reasons why, what ifs, and I shoulda, woulda, couldas, and all of that. But for me, being away from my kid, being on limited funds, making it stretch, deviating from my original plan, that was a big change up, big stressor. But then the fruits of your labor and what you end up accomplishing at the end just totally wipes all of that out of the ballpark. It doesn't matter at the end. As long as you accomplish what you accomplish and you get home with 10 feet, 10 toes, 10 fingers, 10 toes, then you're good. And some rock solid calf muscles, But,
Chewy, what are some significant differences between the AT and the PCT?
AT is physically more challenging as far as just like it's an older trail. So the way that they designed trails back then was completely different than this new approach. The PCT, like I said about my buddy Taxi, he got upset that the trails were these less than 8% grades, and there are a lot of switchbacks, and you could just tell where the mountain was going. And so for him, that was boring. And for me, that was also a challenge of, seeing Mount San Jacinto and the amazing amount of switchbacks that you have going down the other side of it. When you can see that, where you're going is just a nosedive straight down. And,
devil slide.
Yeah, like there were some areas I was just really cursing out the people that made the trail. Like, why did you do this way? Knowing that it's conservation reasons, I get it, but the AT is just physically just tougher. Like the hills are sharper. Logistically, the PCT was tougher. Maybe for me being from the East Coast and going out west, but the trail towns were further apart. The water caches were, you had to plan those out. And then even backpacking, you're going through different, environments. So you're having to pack for the high altitudes. You have to pack for a desert. You have to pack for, a rainforest when you get into Washington State. So the AT is, deciduous. You're in these mid-level forests for most of the trip, and so it's a lot of the constant same things. And so for some people, being on the AT, it's called the Virginia Blues, because when you go through Virginia, it's just depressing because you're going through these green tunnels and they all look the same. And so, a lot of people just lose the motivation to keep going because they just don't think that it ever stops, that, they're going to get that cool vista again. And so it really, deflects people that way.
What are y'all? Do you guys see that movie with the two old timers that try to do either the PCT or the AT?
Oh, that sucked. Yeah. Walk in the woods.
With who was that? With that
Robert Redford.
Oh, was it Robert Redford? Oh, it was Robert Redford. So. Yeah. Yeah, the AT. That was on the AT, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I rarely not finish a movie. I did not finish that movie.
You didn't miss much.
Yeah.
Now, Wild, on the other hand, that seemed like a pretty gripping story. What do you guys see as flaws in that story, though, having done it? Is it Wild, the one with Reese Witherspoon?
Yeah.
Yeah. The book goes into a lot more of her personal reasoning for doing the trail. And there wasn't a whole lot of talk about the trail community in ways that the book explained in the movie. Not that I have any problem with anybody getting inspiration to go do the trail based on these books, but I think that anything like A Walk in the Woods or Wild or most of these personal memoirs aren't good references to start, as far as researching. if you want to start researching the trail, go onto the online forums, talk to people that are, constantly out there, your trail conservation crews, your chapters, your groups, because these people that go out on the trail, sometimes they do it just to write a book. And, to them, it's either their way that they write about, and they don't really try to gather anybody else's perspectives on things. And I think that can be the misinformation, is that if you don't go out and you only get this one person's perspective on it, then you're not understanding the community around it.
What pisses you guys off about like folks doing the trails or the through hikes? Like what's an ethical thing that you've noticed and you're like, oh, I hate that?
Slack packing? No, no, I don't care. I think everyone does their trail the way they do their trail.
What's slack packing?
Slack packing is when you either I guess what people do is they'll hitchhike to a town, drop off all their pack and gear, and then hitch back to the trailhead where they got picked up, and then they'll hike a section to their gear.
What?
Yeah, and the people will do that all through the whole trail. I don't know.
Also, that they don't have to carry the weight. Yeah.
Dude, that doesn't count. That doesn't count.
Well,
that just.
I can understand if like you're injured and your plane ticket's up in Canada, you got to make it there or whatnot. But you're just trying to. There's situations, but when people just do it just to do that, I don't know. Might as well just hike on the weekends.
Yeah, that's kind of messed up. What about you, Chewy? What are the things that piss you off?
As far as like ethically or anything like that?
Yeah.
Man,
or just in general,
tough.
like things that people do that piss you off.
I think the older I get, the more things start to piss me off. Probably about outdoorsy people. It might be how I'm being detached from things, but like, I don't think people are necessarily following leave no trace principles to the best of their abilities. At places like Overlook Mountain in in Tennessee, you have college groups that come through and they'll just build their own campfire pits. And it's really upsetting because there's areas where I think it was Backpacker Magazine wrote about an assault on Max Patch, which was like, you guys can look this up, but like Max Patch is a bald in Tennessee, and it's barely like from the parking lot, it's barely a hike to get to the top of. And like just a rave of people went up there and just torched the place, not on fire, but just like left stuff there. They didn't pack out their comforters that they brought with them. Probably one thing that pisses me off is that when you go out in the woods and you find beer, it's never good beer. It's always Bud Light or Natty Light or Michelob Ultra. Like, why, if you guys are going to bring out beer, why don't you make it a good tasting beer that you can actually enjoy? Why is it always this Bud Light and this bad anyway?
Or surface turds. That's one thing I don't like. When you hit a camp, it's late at night. It's like 6, 7, sun's going down. You got to pitch a tent, find a flat spot. And there, right on the perfect flat spot for you to set up camp, there's a surface turd. Someone that was so lazy, and it's a solid guy too. Like, it's not like they had, the squirts or anything. But you're talking about someone who just dropped trowel and just shit right on the dirt, and then didn't even throw a rock over it. They just left it there for the next person to admire. Piss me off, man. Have to deal with that, and you're all trying to find a stick to push it over, and then you're just like, I'm literally laying next to where someone just took a dump, things like that. That sucked. Surface turds.
Well, that's definitely that's one of many things you learn in NOLS, right? Is like the etiquettes of leave no trace. And personally, I think I knew about burying my poop, but I think it was definitely solidified in the NOLS course. because you're basically like a Nazi if you did anything.
You gotta make
Like-
soup out of it, bro. You're just like,
Yeah,
make sure you get it wet, stir it up.
That's right.
That's
Yeah,
nasty.
you need to make a poop soup.
Yeah, poop soup. That's right.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah.
What yeah, what are, I guess, here's a question, Archie, yourself being a military man, did you come to find that NOLS was more or less like the civilian version of boot camp?
I wouldn't take it that far. Not at all.
No?
But for civilians, you got to remember, I went through NOLS in my late 30s, and I was also I think the oldest one in our class.
Mm-hmm.
But for people that were between the ages of 18 to 23-ish, this is probably like the biggest expedition they've ever done, and been away from home, electronics and all the vices. But to say like military, I wouldn't take it that far. I know for a fact that NOLS has core values like leadership that's instilled in the program, strict guidelines on their program like a military would. In fact, I know NOLS is part of a military program. I know ROTC and the Navy midshipmen go through a NOLS leadership course and through part of their education. But in the military, once you walk in through those doors, you're just another boot. It doesn't matter what part of the country you're from, and even in your case, what country you're from, right? It doesn't matter if your religious, your beliefs. It doesn't matter your political beliefs. Everyone's the same. I feel that educational institutions aren't like that nowadays. They are biased one way or the other. That does reflect. In fact, for me, it actually helped me grow a little bit. The fact that there was a bias in perception and in thought, learning new things that had never crossed my path living here in Southern California, where I'm from originally, from Rosemead. And it was definitely a culture shock for me. But it's in that aspect, no, there's a big divide there between the military boot camp and, we're not getting up at NOLS and we're exercising every day and waiting in line for hours to eat and getting yelled at 24/7. That's just not happening.
I'll tell you why I think that in a second, but why was it such a culture shock for you?
Because I had to really mind my P's and Q's. I had to really understand social dynamics in a total different aspect, being around people from a different generation as well. Learning certain things that were totally against the grain for me for a minute, identity politics and people's personal feelings. That's just something that's always been out the door with me, and that affected me. It affected the way, how I performed, whether I was going to be frustrated that day or people were going to be frustrated with me, trust, just things like that, it's just different for me.
What about you, Chewy? Like, what was your perception of NOLS, like your takeaway from the course?
I was in AmeriCorps, not that that's anything like what y'all guys went through, but I did have somebody in my course with me that did an outdoor NOLS semester, and he said that it was his hardest thing that he's ever done in his life. So it prepped me for that, and just knowing that what I was about to do was going to be a tough thing to do. I think that NOLS prepared me for a life as far as guiding, like services wise, for like what to prepare for if you have groups and dynamics, and like how to like be patient and to like understand certain things and like to work around them. Um, yeah, like I don't know about boot camp and all that. I definitely think that there were, some guidelines and some things that practices that they wanted you to do. I really got a lot out of the backcountry cooking. I learned as far as how to prepare good meals, and I carried some of that with me this summer. I led 2 50-mile canoe trips
Nice.
for groups. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I carried some of those skills that I learned from NOLS over into that service, and that was cool.
Yeah, I can definitely say that for sure. NOLS did prepare me. Their navigation rock, man. It upped my game in my basic navigation that I learned in the military and just doing my own thing. And then also going into the backcountry and hitting topo maps and shooting an azimuth and walking what we tracking what we walk and know where we've been and know where we're going. Definitely up my game on that. The cooking, I took that to the PCT, man. People were tripping out on me. I whip out a can of Cheese Whiz. They're like, "Oh, I got Cheese Whiz," and I was over there eating chili mac while everyone was just eating ramen. You know what I mean? Things like that. I did a veterans course with Outward Bound, and that's another outdoor education program that I think rocks. They do free expeditions for veterans. They also it's really good for youth and young adults. And I did a canoe trip with them, the Jersey Devil and the Lehigh River, and that was an awesome experience. Things that I learned through NOLS, I took it on those expeditions, and that definitely showed. And I was able to actually teach an LNT class for Outward Bound through what I learned at NOLS, which is pretty cool. But yeah.
So LNT is leave no trace. Yeah.
Yeah. LNT, leave no trace. And I mean, NOLS has an awesome program. Their medical program, I still want to get a little bit more involved in that. I'm still tossing that up. We're all woofers. We all went through the wilderness first responder course. I thought that was awesome. You're an EMT, so you know what that's all about.
Speaking of which, I was kind of devastated because I only got an email saying that my wilderness first responder was expiring the day it was expiring. And I was like, thanks for the notice. I mean, it's on me. I should have looked up on this, right? But I was like, gee, thanks for letting me know. And I was like, oh man, that's too bad. They extended it a year. They extended it a year because of COVID. And that's I called them recently and I was like,
oh, really?
Hey, what's with this last minute email? And I was like, as I was looking through their email, I was like, oh wait, you guys extended it a year. Oh, never mind. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.
There's actually a story I have on the Sierras. We're coming down the backside of Forester, and one of our hiking partners there, Panda, he was taking some killer NAR pictures, man. Just awesome quality pictures, but he was getting a little too into it. He wasn't paying attention. He slipped on ice on a rock, and he smashed his face and split his kneecap wide open. But I had already hiked maybe about a quarter mile past them. But I was like, okay, it's getting about noon. We're going to eat lunch, so I'll wait for them down here. So I was waiting. I look back, and I just see a group chilling out by a rock. And I'm like, man, they're all exposed up there. And I'm like, they're probably just eating. And I was like, wow, forget them, So I started eating down there. And then one of the guys starts running down slowly. I see him coming. I'm just like, what does he want? He's like, hey, man, do you know how to sew? And I'm like, oh man, someone ripped their jacket, And I'm like, yeah, I got a sewing kit. And he goes, no, dude, Panda's kneecap is ripped open. And I was just like, what? So I go running back up there. And dude, they did this debauchery of things. They packed Vaseline on top of ice, and it was pretty ruthless. And long story short, I ended up I got my gloves. I had gloves in my kit because I still had my kit set up the way NOLS has their kit set up, right? And I laid him down. He had a pretty bad contusion on his face, and he seemed like he had a little bit of a concussion, so we monitored him, and then I made a splint, and I cleaned up his wound really good, and then just cut up the Band-Aid and made a bunch of steri strips out of it, and then wrapped him up, betadine the heck out of him, and then I used my Z mat, my Z light mat to make a knee splint, and then we some girl was hot on her spot. She wanted to hit that button, man, and get the chopper out there, right? He's just like, no, don't do that. And he ended up self-rescuing out of there. He hiked himself out 10 miles, and then he dropped down. Actually, that's when we were dropping down into Bishop.
Well, good on you, Medicine Man.
Might have been, but yeah. So that came up afterwards. That was a trip. But I'll share that picture with you.
The reason, yeah, and for all you guys tuning in on YouTube, check that out. The reason I say that NOLS is kind of the civilian version of boot camp is because, yeah, there's definitely all these like kind of regimented restrictions as far as, like I mentioned, the alcohol. There's no drugs. There's no cursing. But more than that, yeah, there's no cell phone, which is very much like boot camp. You can't you can't contact your folks. But on top of that, yeah, you're put in these wilderness environments with individuals 24/7, and that's probably, in my opinion, the hardest thing of NOLS is, what other situation aside from boot camp are you put into where you have to deal with those same individuals 24/7 for, what was it, like 3 and some change months? That's definitely, in my opinion, the challenge of it. And the benefit of NOLS, I suppose, was you really get to understand, like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm an asshole in this aspect because there's no other way around it. Because people can pack it in for a couple weeks, right? But like, and even your wife or your girlfriend or your mom, you might see her at night or in the morning, right? But at least she gets you get a break midday. Not NOLS, right? You're with those same individuals all the time. So it really brings out the worst and the best in folks, and the worst is going to get pointed out. So I think most of us go through a point at NOLS where you're like, oh, all right, got to make some adjustments, right?
Yeah, definitely. It was hard for me. There was some struggles that I had. Definitely. I'm not going to say NOLS was easy. No way. It was different. But it's just like when you say boot camp for civilians, yeah, I see where the big struggles can be. But when you say boot camp, I automatically just go to that 1 or 3 drill sergeants like yelling at you constantly and just not leaving you alone. And there's no way in heck that NOLS was like that.
So yeah. in NOLS, we all went through a hiking section. So in the Wind River Range, what was the second one? The Wilderness First Responder, also in Wyoming. Then we went to Utah to do rock climbing not Utah, in Nevada and Red Rocks, right? Yeah. Yeah. And then what do we do? Canyoneering in Utah, finishing with the winter portion, which is like living in snow huts, is that the Wyoming range or the Wind River Range again?
Yeah. The Wyoming range.
Wyoming range.
Winter, yeah, with the winter section.
What was y'all's favorite section, and why?
Chewy.
I can still say to this day that the canyoneering section sucked.
That was my favorite.
That was really good. That was that was my most challenging section, but it wasn't my favorite section for sure. For me, I'd either have to split that between the climbing or the winter. For me, just because as far as climbing, I had certain skills, but that helped me to kind of put things into perspective as far as what I wanted to be doing in life. And then the winter section was just had me falling back in love with, camping, not like backpacking or hiking, but just like camping. Like there was just something about the spirit there that just like tied it all together.
Yeah. I think the winter section was a fun section for sure. It was all coming together. It was all coming to a close. Everybody was kind of like eager to get out, but like I love to see you leave, but I hate to see you go kind of thing, and we all had fun. Canyoneering was definitely the hardest section emotionally and physically. Chewy managed to burn 6 out of 8 pairs of socks that I owned.
He won't let that go. He won't let that
go. But he can build a killer campfire, man. I'll tell you what. But
we had him going all night.
He didn't know wool can burn so good. Yeah, no, but canyoneering, I think, really tested us, especially with that water, man. That was crazy. Some of that water we're drinking was horrible. We're chewing on it. I don't know. I like Woofer. I definitely went over there to learn things.
What made the canyoneering so hard for you guys?
Social dynamics.
Okay.
There were sections. I don't want to say anything too negative here, but the way I still feel about it today is that they were trying to pride and prod at like certain things that weren't necessarily there. Like certain, they were trying to, do mind games in a way, so to speak.
Yeah.
And not that like we don't need to learn about social dynamics and that sort of thing, but there were also just times where like I felt like I was a lab rat. But from outside of that, like no, I mean I love everybody. Like Archie is right, y'all are right about spending way too much time together can really start to make you go insane. And some of that was that, but it wasn't that like I hold negative feelings towards anybody I was with. It was more just along of like, can I get some privacy? And because we couldn't get that, yeah, and I really wanted to call my folks, man. Like Thanksgiving was coming up, and I felt like this was the most, alone place for 25 days living under a rock, and I just really wanted to hear my sister's voice or talk to my mom or something. And so that to me was the toughest. Yeah.
Chewy, I don't think we shared a tent. Did we share a tent at the rock climbing section? No,
we
were next to us.
We shared a tent.
You guys shared the stinkiest out of all 𝐿𝐥𝐢𝐿𝐥𝐢𝐿. That was disgusting. It was stinky. I went in it. It was stinky.
Yeah, but we had a very symbiotic built 𝐞𝐥𝐢𝐿. I was the inside decorator, and I made that in a way where we could all interact in an equal and bonding circular way. So I made the beds like in a way where we could all like talk to each other. That was a good time.
No,
we had some good conversations, Chewy, in that 𝐞𝐥𝐢𝐿.
That was good. Oh yeah.
You guys don't know this, but like in the rock climbing, so like in NOLS, that's the thing. Like you can't leave ever. You're in NOLS. But one thing I did is in the Nevada section, I left. Like at night I had that friend that came to visit. And me and her just like literally we just like I left camp like in the night and we just like went out into the town and just fucking had a fucking hoot. And I won't say more about what we did, but like yeah, it was definitely like I forgot what life was like outside of NOLS, and I got a break. I feel like I cheated it. that day, but it was a great. I felt like the rebel that like flee the prison.
I think I cheated. I think I felt like I cheated NOLS when I got caught with my phone in the winter section, and they were just like, "You have your what? What do you have your phone?" I was just like, "No, my pictures. Just take pictures."
But they were pretty casual about it once they did.
Yeah. I was like, it doesn't even work. I still have a phone that doesn't work.
Living in your van down by the river, huh?
Oh man, can't wait.
Dude, one of the great things about like why I preach going out in the wilderness for a prolonged period of time is it really amplifies things when you get back into civilian life. For example, for me it was, and Chewy, you could probably relate, but music. You know, like when I got back and I put earbuds in, it was like a trip. It was like the most orgasmic music I've ever heard in my life, and it was songs I've heard 1,000 times before, you know, but they sounded so much more pure, so clean and so beautiful, you know.
I don't know. I had some awesome memories hanging out with Chewy and James around the campfire, jamming out when he brought his mandolin out, and then we totally jacked the guitars from the instructors, and we were just out there jamming out every night after all day climbing. That from the climbing section, I hold dear to my heart. I think it's going to be one of the memories, like the minute before I die, you know, and everything starts coming through your head. It's going to be Chewy playing that mandolin.
I'll see you in hell.
You first. Yeah, for sure, man. That was awesome. I wish we had like recordings of that. I don't think I have any recordings of that.
The guitar battles. I have a little bit. I'll play it on YouTube. I have a little video of Chewy. I think everyone was kind of involved. Everyone was playing a little instrument in the winter section.
You got some of those videos?
I got one. Yeah, I think somebody recorded it.
Man. That's when Lurch picked up the egg shaker and the harmonica, right?
Yeah. I think Rob was playing it in that video, but yeah, it's a good time.
Too cool.
Yeah. All right, boys, we're about out of time here. Thanks for coming on. Any last parting words for anybody, you know, trying to get after it in the outdoors, in the wilderness, on these marathon of hikes?
Yeah, man. Go for it, Chewy.
Keep it short.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you. One of my favorite sections on the PCT. My favorite story was going through a place called Belden, California, where there was a auto DJ electronic festival happening in the small town that the only authority was a park ranger that had to watch over 3 different counties. So he was barely there. And so it was this lawless town where people were just debauchery everywhere. But oh man, like 3 days of EDM music festival and just being on the river floating and enjoying the tunes. So if you want to go out on the PCT, try to plan on being in Belden sometime mid to late July when they come through and create a small Burning Man festival.
I want to invite both of you guys back out to California, man. I probed this 40 miles of the CRHT, the California Riding and Hiking Trail. It goes straight through Joshua Tree. It's 40 miles. You can do sections of it, but there's good climbing there too. Good trad. I know you like trad there, Vinny. But me and Chewy definitely had a good time partnering up and climbing over in Nevada.
That'd be so
James.
fun.
So you guys come on out. I'll try to get James out here too, and get out here, get some climbing in, get a little bit of hiking in, whatever, or just camp and climb.
We should link up because my girlfriend wants to go see her family down in Cali area, so that'd be pretty cool if we plan that out.
Yeah, man, that'd be great.
Anyway,
excited, man.
We're about to get cut out. Thanks you boys for coming on.
All right.
All right.
Man.
Love you, fellas.
Peace out.
All right.
Love you, man.
Thanks, y'all.
Take it easy. Peace.
Peace.
Got it. Thank you.